there's another use case here. Although we went very far afield, we were talking about multi-cloud direct internet connectivity and so on, and then kind of ended up diving into the solution. But there's another SASE, I guess is the word. I think Gartner coined the term, right? Secure access. What was it? Secure access.
Services edge.
Services edge. Sir, that's the word. It's VPNs plus other stuff. That's what it is. How do I? So now I've got 12 of these solutions kicking around my network. How do I monitor that and what's going on as different people leverage different of these access solutions to get on my network? And maybe the answer goes back to what we were talking about earlier, the endpoint. But I want to hear from an AppNeta perspective how I deal with this situation.
Yeah, I think that's 100% it. We talked about all the types of metrics that we're gathering and the fact that you've kind of lost visibility and you're trying to get that visibility through the active and passive techniques. But it does fundamentally boil down to where you're measuring from. All of this application delivery and the complexity related to that is to get the application to the user. So we want to instrument where the user is. And by doing that, that means we have the flexibility and the capability to measure across these different transports. And, especially in the case of SASE, where you actually have all this kind of confluence of technologies that are happening, the proxy, the VPN, what you need to remember is that first and foremost, we need to understand the end user experience. We need to do it from as close to the user as we can. And we need to have that insight because as you're starting to split things off, split tunnel, as you're starting to offload them to the internet, that's when you're making the choice to say, I'm not going to see this traffic anymore. I'm not going to see this end user experience anymore. So the solve for that is to let's be measuring from that point of view so we can follow those routing rules and changes.
So John, did you just say agent? When you say measuring from the endpoint perspective, is that what that means to me?
Yeah, I think agent is completely fine. We have our own sort of language for that. We call them monitoring points, but those monitoring points come in many forms. It could be as simple as an agent that's running on a user's machine. And that is particularly applicable, obviously, to this sort of era of work from home. And also monitoring points can take the form of virtual appliances or physical appliances that are deployed in the office, at a branch, at a campus, and even the form of a container that might be deployed within a data center or in some cloud provider as well. So there's lots of different sort of form factors to this, but the idea is, yes, we want to instrument at these key points so that we can measure from the right perspective.
So that's interesting. If we go to the endpoint perspective, that end user perspective, because they're typically the ones that are going to be hanging off of some kind of an SD-WAN endpoint, whatever it is that's fulfilling that SASE role in my organization. Do I run an agent there that shims into the OS and watches the flows as they go in and out of that OS?
Yeah, so perfect segue to sort of understanding what metrics are available where. So if we were to install, say, directly on a user's machine, so it doesn't really matter where they're working, if they're working in the office or they're working from home, like
right.
We are using that active technique, that active approach that we talked about earlier, where we're generating the traffic from that perspective across the network. So going out onto their ISP, however it is that they're getting to a split tunneled application, or however it is that they're getting to an application that's hosted in the data center, we're going to follow that path. We're going to see the quality of that network performance. And so there, we're actually not looking at the user traffic. We're not analyzing the user traffic. In some cases, that's a big no-no. Customers and enterprises are still having some difficulty sort of adapting to the visibility, getting visibility right on a user's machine. So our answer to that is to stay super, super lightweight and just focus on how an application is being delivered.
Yeah, John, that actually ties in directly to the earlier topic of direct internet access too. When you think about working from an office environment where you've got 100 people sharing a physical space, typically means they're sharing a set of connections to their applications. Those applications might be corporate provided, MPLS. Increasingly, it's now also leveraging corporate level ISPs and maybe even wireless. And you mentioned Ethan SD-WAN. This is where the idea of steering your applications down a different path to the service origination point based either on its classification or the availability or performance of a given link.
Yeah,
Ties directly back into your question.
it's going to be
all things come
super
together.
important. There's a couple of things there that I've seen lately. There's a couple. One is if people start working from co-working spaces or coffee shops, those the internet connections in a co-working space like the are often heavily overloaded. The co-working space has no interest in giving a good internet connection. They just offer a internet connection. And if it doesn't, if you're paying $20 a day for a desk, they don't really give a rat's about you. And knowing that it's the local internet connection is key. So there's part of distributed working, which is just simply link monitoring. But in the case of SD-WAN or SASE, you've got a bunch of potential pain points there. One of them is you might be deploying an SD-WAN, but you've also got a migration. You've still got some legacy MPLS with some heritage routers on the end there with some, legendary T1 connections that you've had for 25 years. And, and then over here's your SD-WAN and it's running on, DSL connections, and they've gone from 1.5 meg with a 1.5 meg backup to 2 by 100 meg DSLs, right? How do you monitor both of those networks, right? Because the SD-WAN is going to give you some tooling, but you've got to put them together. This comes back to this diversity. The other trick is for SASE is a lot of it starts to do local breakout to the internet, and the traffic goes this way. It doesn't go that way anymore. And as you add SASE, you're also adding content inspection or application inspection or content firewalling or threat management or intrusion, whatever you want to call SASE. So SASE is basically bolting a bunch of security features inside of it. And the different SASE players do it differently. Some of it send it off to a place in the cloud where, mystical elves reach out and unpack the packets and do something with it. And others say, no, it's an edge play. We're going to send it all. We're going to have an application firewall, which is fine. But all of those things mean that you get less and less certainty around the network. You don't understand. And to me, this is where network monitoring, I always think of products these days in what I call the days. And there's 3 days. There's day 0, which is what you think you want and what you buy it for. So you talk to the salesman, you say, I want this. And then there's day 1, which is the features you actually install. And you could work out that there's a lot less of those features than you buy. And then there's day 2, which is the features that you actually use a year later, which is an even smaller set of what you bought. And to me, it's that whole process of moving through that evolution as quickly as possible. You need enough flexibility in your monitoring to go day 0, day 1, day 2. This is what I actually end up using 6 months down the pipeline. And SASE is really difficult because it's so complex to me.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
I was going to say that, it starts, I think if your North Star for how you choose to instrument is to say, well, first and foremost, we know that we're going to go through changes. We know we have a legacy network. We know we're going to implement, whether it's proxy today or SD-WAN tomorrow, there's some, jockeying of position for what the most important thing is, especially in this climate. But the North Star is we need to do it from the end user perspective. So we know that, at least that. And if you also have in your mind as you're kind of entering into this, that you need to understand what it is today. And that's, sometimes a big, there's a lot of white space there that you want to go make this change, and that it's for the reasons of improving end user experience, and it's for the reasons of perhaps reducing costs, whatever it is. But do you actually know what it is today? Do you know that when you're going to go make this change, that it's going to make things better? So having that platform that's adaptable enough to say, I can measure it the way it is today, and I can measure it through this change, which means I'm going to have the answer to that question. We were working with a company that was doing SD-WAN, and their sort of mandate was do no harm with SD-WAN. It wasn't that it had to be better. It didn't have to be better. They knew they were going to be trying to save money. So the point is it had to do no harm. It had to do at least as good as the way it currently was. So, but that meant you had to have that answer. You have to know what it currently is to be able to.
-1. They needed day -1.
Yeah, that's right. Well,
so building on this notion of days 1, 2, and 3, there's a question from the audience. This sounds like a day 0 question. He says, I don't want to hire an expert to use this tool. I've already got a general network person. How easy would it be for this person to use this product and become effective quickly? That gets right to the heart of this operational issue.
Yeah, I could speak to that. I think when it comes to onboarding and joining the AppNeta family, we have a proven process that we can use to bring general network skill sets onboard very quickly and get them up and running. We could even do things like fulfill a large global deployment very quickly by pre-configuring and drop shipping direct to site, put in a leaflet, get people the support they need at the local affiliates to cable these up. So if you can cable a router, you can install AppNeta very easily. And we have great support and teams to help you along the way. New customers would be onboarded with a progress, basically a 90-day program that we've instrumented along the way. And that takes care of everything from initial setup to architecture to building to achieve your positive outcomes with the configuration of the solution. It could be integration with your SSO, notification of other northbound systems you may have in your enterprise. So it's a comprehensive program, and that even includes some of the synthetics and setup. So if you've got a proprietary web app and you want us to help you get a script to log in and synthetically transact that, we'll accommodate that in your onboarding. So we make it easy.
Yeah, to piggyback, one of the things that's interesting to Adam's point, there's different stages of success when you start to use a new solution. And if you're an IT professional, you've used a lot of different tools before. But one of the things we pride ourselves is making sure that we're actually solving the problems you care about. So when we work with our clients today, and John and Adam are both experts at doing this, we go through a proof of value process prior to any sale to make sure that our technology and our solution platform is working on your network with your applications, with your users. And so you're seeing this work, and through that proof of value process, you also get a chance to see exactly, well, how difficult is it to use this myself? Because there's nothing worse than the vendor making it look super easy because they're doing all the work. And then at some point, as Adam said, when the baton is handed off, you feel overwhelmed. So we think that by bringing the customers in throughout the proof of value process, and then during the transition with a focus on the positive business outcomes, it allows us to both bring the customer along for the journey, as well as understand how the platform operates. So by the time we do drop the keys off, they're ready to go. And let
me give you a different perspective as somebody who's been a victim of monitoring systems for 3 decades. It's the ultimate career enhancement. If you can stand up in front of the CIO and say, here's a chart of things that are going wrong, and I can tell you where the problems are inside of the organization. So if I'm monitoring the application and I can say to him, your Oracle application performance goes to rubbish on Friday afternoons at 3 o'clock. You win, right? You get pay rises. You're the man. You're the person. You're the person in the spotlight. You're going to get the pay rise, get the promotion, whatever it is. And there are 3 things that make network engineers visible above the waterline, like whatever. One is owning the IP addressing scheme, because then you've got everybody by the throat. The second one is having a monitoring solution that can see inside of whatever everybody else is doing. You own it, right? And the third one is when you're not around, the network doesn't work. Everybody knows who you are, right? But let's not forget the third one. The first 2 are the important ones. So never underestimate the value of monitoring in terms of positioning, making yourself visible to executives. Because if you own that, you become not business critical, but business strategic. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole other bucket of pay rises associated to being strategic to the business. And it's all completely imaginary and it's all rubbish, but that's a reality.
Yeah, we talked about...
You can't manage what you can't monitor, right? So,
yeah.
Well, in networking, the last 30 years would prove that as a lie, but let's move on.
We talked about the really tactical aspects of like reducing mean time to innocence or reducing mean time to resolution. But I definitely agree with you that there is a strategic element of that. If you can get ahead of the curve and produce that content for the enterprise that says, this is where it's going, this is what we need to be prepared for. These are the changes, and here's how performance is happening today, and this is kind of the trend it's going in. That's being a strategic partner to the business, no longer just firefighting.